But that was Corey Barksdale, Unconditional Love. And it's true, that's what the world needs, is unconditional love. I'm Tracy, and this is, again, the Artist Stage Radio Show on Tabernacle Radio. I know you guys are waiting, and I'm going to be chatting with, right now, Mr. Gerard Bonner on the Artist Stage Radio Show. Hey, Gerard.
Hey, Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. If you guys don't know, Gerard is my music industry twin. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. You're my twin.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Gerard, for joining me on the Artist Stage Radio Show.
I appreciate it.
Now, a lot of people, if you don't know who Gerard Bonner is, he is a music industry veteran. He is a consultant, a radio station owner, host, artist manager. He's also a husband. He's a father, and so many more. But also, I don't think a lot of people know that Gerard is also a photographer. Aren't you, Gerard?
Yeah. Wow, you pulled that one out. I haven't shared that in a while, but I am. Yes, ma'am.
You almost forgot that you was a photographer, didn't you?
Well, it's funny. You forget and you don't. Like, the way that my eye is set up, there are just certain things that I just catch. So, yeah. But, yeah, indeed.
And so also, Gerard, I guess probably in a couple years now, you're going to be celebrating 10 years with Bonnerfide Radio, the station that you own.
Yeah, that'll be in about 2 years. How crazy is that?
See, you got to start paying. You got to remember these things, Gerard. It's going to be coming up real soon for you.
It is. It's coming up soon. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do for that. But that should be fun when we get to that.
Now, Gerard, for those who are listening, Gerard Bonner is the station. He's not just station host, but he's the station owner of Bonnerfide Radio. And Gerard, right before we brought you on the show, you came on the show, I was speaking to those listening. Tip, the before the stage tip, the importance of learning about radio stations. If submitting music to radio is the goal, the importance of learning about radio stations, the terrestrial stations and online stations, who they are, who owns them, who's hosting shows, and also how to submit music to radio stations. Can you give a little feedback on, because you've been doing this since '97? Because before Bonnerfide Radio, you were with Rejoice, you were with Mike Chandler, and you hosted a few other shows. Can you just tell those who are listening and watching the importance of learning about radio prior to even submitting a single and prior to hiring a radio promoter?
Yeah, that becomes very important because all radio stations aren't created equal. And so what you don't want to do, we all have limited amounts of resources and the like, so you want to make sure that you are sending your music and familiarizing yourself with a station that actually your music fits in their format. For example, if you do hip-hop, you do not want to submit your music to a traditional gospel station that doesn't play hip-hop. You'll automatically be denied, The other side of that is if you are a quartet group and you're submitting to a more urban radio station, it's important to know that beforehand. This way you don't get your feelings hurt. And so, yeah, I would definitely say do your research, do your homework, know who's who in the zoo, and know who you'll want to submit your music to. Now, that's not to say that you don't want to get to know radio personalities that are involved in a station where you may not submit music. Our industry changes very fast, and so it's very possible that a person who is at a radio station whose format your music may not fit in today, they may change stations in the next year. Things change. They may end up with their own online scenarios. So you want to make sure that you are kind and considerate to everybody you come in contact with, because you just never know where you'll run into them down the line.
What you just said is really significant, that they may switch up some things. They may be on a terrestrial station as a host and then may have their own online show. But how often does that happen? The switching up.
It happens. It happens. And here's why. Because, our industry is changing so fast these days. things in FM and terrestrial radio are changing quite rapidly. And what many are finding is, the freedoms that you have in an online scenario are not freedoms that you necessarily have in a terrestrial situation. And so there are folks that I know currently at terrestrial radio.
Uh-oh. Well, I think Gerard is still there. I think we may have got a little bit of a disconnection there. Well, what Gerard was saying is that things are a little different sometimes with terrestrial stations and online, because there may be a little bit more freedom with an online station versus a terrestrial, meaning when you go and you're in your car and you can turn the dial. And because they may have a little bit more, I won't say structure, but because they have more stations to cover, sometimes they have to play the same music, and they're not able to kind of play different styles of music whenever they feel like it. So it's always a difference with an online station versus a terrestrial, but you need to definitely know the difference. And he also was saying that we may have, like today, I'm not going to say this happened, but I'm on Artist Stage Radio Show, which is with an online station. Tomorrow, that may change. I think Gerard is back now. You there, Gerard? These things may change, but that's why he said it's always good to stay in contact with the host of a station, whether it's terrestrial or an online station. Don't always just depend on, because they're at this station, you can only connect with that station. Well, I'm not going to say don't connect with the station, but you just want to be kind. You want to continue to communicate with those who are pushing your music and those that you're submitting the music to. So things can change at any point throughout the year, and I'm sure you guys have seen it. Sometimes your favorite hosts, they're no longer there, and it's not always a bad thing, but things change. So you just want to always stay connected and communicate with those who are at radio stations prior to I said before you submit music to a Gerard, are you there? Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. I don't know what quite happened there.
Yes.
But you were saying
I don't either. It's very weird.
Yeah, but you were just talking about how things can change. Well, how the difference between the freedom you may have more freedom on an online station versus a terrestrial station.
Yes, and so because of that, sometimes you'll find that people will make the switch. Also, there are a lot of changes that are happening in terrestrial radio. So there are all sorts of opportunities for folks who are in terrestrial radio to hop onto online radio, or vice versa. Sometimes the success of online radio leads to opportunities in FM radio. So it's just important to get to know who's who in the zoo.
Now, would you say there's also, so we know when you submit a single, nowadays, well, it's pretty much been like this for a while. Well, no, not with gospel. You want to make sure that the song is at least no longer than 4 minutes. Is that the same for terrestrial and online?
I would say yes. Now, granted, online, they have their own, guidelines and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, the idea is to try to get as many songs onto the airwaves as possible. So you don't want to necessarily submit a 5 or 6 or 7 minute song, particularly if it's not good enough. I have a few songs that I play that are that long, but they are that good playing that long. Sometimes we make the mistake of, creating songs more representative of what we would do in concert. And so we want to try to get the whole concert experience on wax, and that's not necessary if you're submitting it on radio. I think your radio single should be a great song, but it should be kind of a sampler of what you will do, down the road. So it should create interest in what's happening for you in terms of concert and album and things of that nature. So definitely, if you're going to have a single, I would definitely suggest having that single between 2.5 and 4 minutes long.
I hope you guys are listening to that. 2.5 between 2.5 and 4 minutes long. But like you said, if it's a great song and a person like Gerard Bonner with Bonnerfide Radio, he just may play your 6 minute, 12 minute. Sometimes the songs are 12 minutes, aren't they, Gerard? 12 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, it's got to be incredibly great. And sometimes I would even have, I would suggest have a radio version and have a full version. If you want to submit both, fine, but it's better to submit the radio version and let people ask for the longer version.
Okay, let them ask for it, not just assume that they're going to play it because it's 45 minutes. So
exactly.
We want to
exactly.
So just stick notes. So you guys, hope you guys are listening. With online stations, just don't always assume, well, they can do whatever they want, so I'm just going to give them my whole record and just let them figure it out. So be kind, be courteous, think ahead that they still have to input music, as much music as possible, just like a terrestrial station. Now, Gerard, I want to switch lanes a little bit here. So we know that you are the owner, host, and everything of Bonnerfide Radio, your station, but you're also an artist manager with Bonnerfide Management Group. How did that come about? Because I know that, you've been doing this a long time. When you were with, let me back up for you all who don't know, Gerard Bonner is also one of the founders of gospelflavor.com. Right when the internet was hitting and buzzing with press releases online, gospelflavor.com was the place to go for your music industry information. And Gerard Bonner, he is one of the founders of one of the top gospel music industry sites or media sites around. But Gerard, so that means that you have interacted with several hundreds of artists since 1997, and we're in 2017. So I know that you're very familiar with how artists operate, their style, how they perform. So explain to me, and also those are listening and watching, explain to me and also tell me, did your experience with working with artists all these years, did that influence you to start a management group?
Yeah, what really influenced it for me, it's kind of why we even started Gospel Flavor in the first place. I really wanted artists to kind of have a level playing field. Since then, one of the biggest things that has changed in our industry has been a lack of artist development. Mm-hmm. It used to be a staple at record labels, and you worked at a record label mm-hmm. where, artist development was a major component. That has since gone away. And so what's ended up happening since that has gone away is you have a lot of artists who now have far more access to be able to create music, to be able to release music, but they don't know the secret sauce to being an artist. And so I really felt as though the next way to be able to help influence that was to be a manager. And so the way this story goes, about a year or so ago, a very dear friend of mine called me out of the blue and said to me, "Hey, have you thought about managing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but it mm-hmm. hadn't been front of brain." And they said, well, I believe God's telling me that you're going to be managing and you're going to have a great group of artists, and these are the things that are going to happen. And so that was October of 2016 when they told me that, and I just kind of took it like, okay, well, whenever it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. And this past summer, out of the blue, I had 3 people just randomly hit me up, and I really kind of took that as the sign that, okay, now is the time to go for it. And what I'm finding is when there's something that you're supposed to do, mm-hmm. you'll be surprised at how it just happens for you. Mm-hmm. There's some things we're just naturally gifted to do, and I have found, that this is one of those things where I know I'm in my lane to be able to do this. And so it's been a very exciting ride. Our first signee is Amante Lacey, and mm-hmm. we just did a big live recording with him back in December. And it's exciting. The things that are coming up for Amante this year are absolutely amazing. And we have a few other signings that are getting ready to be announced over time. So mm-hmm. It's an exciting time right now. And for me, I just want to give the best of who I am to artists who have been disenfranchised, to artists who have felt as though, this industry wasn't for them, because there are a lot of people who are in this primarily for the money and who will take your money and not give you anything in return. And that's not me. I want to really use and leverage what I've been given to be able to help people to be their absolute best. And so that's the exciting thing about Bonnerfide Management Group and what we're able to do. And it's just an exciting, exciting time.
Now, so you've mentioned that a lot of artists may have not received the proper help over time, or maybe not have known who to go to for help or proper management or development. But do you think that gospel artists have been, I want to say slighted, but maybe not well educated in the area of development, and not on purpose not well educated, but do you think out of all the different genres that maybe the gospel artists, we just don't understand development or haven't been exposed to it? That's the first question. And do you think that that's something that still should be implemented for gospel artists?
I think one of the biggest challenges that's facing the gospel genre when it comes to that type of thing is this. We have seemingly felt as though, everything comes from God. And so since everything comes from God, it doesn't seem to require stewardship or management. And, and I think that that's been a mistake that a lot of us have been paying for. The truth of it is, business is business. This is the music business. And, ministry is a very important part of it. But in that, the Bible tells us that, to be men in business. And so we've got to be able to handle the business aspect of what we do. Now, do I think that gospel artists have been slighted? Accurate. I think that gospel artists at times have made decisions that weren't in their best business interest, because too often as gospel artists we spent more time really focusing on the spiritual aspect of things and leaving the practical aspect to chance. And I don't think that we can afford to do that. I'm a believer in this. I believe that we are most like God when we are really operating in integrity in all areas of our lives. So God never asked us to be super spiritual and then ignorant of things of the earth. He tells us to study to show ourselves approved, a workman, rightly dividing the word of truth, a workman that doesn't need to be ashamed. And that's not just speaking of the Bible. Anything that we are involved in, we ought to study to show ourselves approved. So, and this is what's funny. If you were a doctor, no one would want you to come into the room and strictly pray for them. They would want you to look at their issue and be able to give a correct diagnosis and give the proper prescription for how that should be solved. And that only comes after years and years of studying what's happening in that particular field. And I think that the same thing has to happen for gospel music and gospel artists, that we need to take the time to study our craft. It's not just enough to be able to sing a great hook and to sing a great run, but you also need to understand business trends. You need to understand, why streaming is important these days. Our industry and genre fought against streaming for a solid 5 years. And now we have no choice but to accept it. And we've told people, buy, don't stream. And we've kind of cut ourselves off because we didn't take the time to understand those elements of the industry. So I would just make the suggestion, I don't think we've been slighted. I think to some degree we've closed the door on things because traditionally as a Christian community, particularly as an African-American Christian community, we tend to be the last ones on the totem pole with certain things, and some of that is by choice because we don't want to immediately accept technology. We don't want to accept this type of information usually. That's why you'll find information sessions, at workshops tend to be sparsely attended, but the concert is well attended.
Yes.
One of our guilty pleasures is we like entertainment more than information. So the artists that choose to buckle down, get involved with the business of the industry, and get themselves educated and hire people who are equally educated, if not more educated, it will really help them in the long run.
I'm just like soaking all this in, because you said something. I want to go back to something you said, because sometimes you said sometimes the gospel artists will become not too spiritual, but will focus more on the spiritual part. But you said I hope you can remember exactly what you said, because I'm going to have to go back and replay it to put it in the comments. But you said we can become more like God when we pretty much take on all things that he's trying to teach us. Do you remember exactly what you said? Because I swear I just want to say it right now. You said.
Let me put it.
Okay.
I'll try to get it. The thing about look at the way in which God operated. I love the story of creation. We can learn so much from the story of creation. When God created the heaven and earth, okay, he didn't just randomly say, I'm going to throw this here and throw this there and see what sticks. He was very deliberate, and he was very intentional. Think about it. And he didn't just throw everything. Now, he had the power to say, you know what, I'm going to create the whole world in one day. But he didn't. First he created light and darkness and separated that. Then he walked away, and he said, you know what, that's good. Then he came back and did a little bit more and said it was good. He was knowledgeable about what it was that he was doing. And that's the thing that I think a lot of us miss out on. We are more interested in inspiration than we are information. And so because of that, we are highly inspired people who often lack the information to be effective. And that's why we end up signing poor deals. That's why we end up getting involved in things that we shouldn't get involved in. And then later we blame the industry when if we had read the fine print, or if we had, hired a lawyer or gotten a manager who's equipped to handle these dealings and not just a family friend, we would put ourselves in a better position in the long term. So I would just say, as gospel artists, let us allow our information to match our inspiration, and we'll be good to go.
Man, everyone that's listening, I hope you guys are writing this down. I'm going to try to put it all back in the comments, but Gerard Bonner is really giving. And I see people on Facebook, like they're repeating what you're saying and requoting what you're saying. This is really good, guys, because we can't. You said when God created the earth, he was knowledgeable about what he was doing. Like you said, he could have just said, here it is, but he took 7 days, and It was intentional. It was on purpose. It wasn't just haphazard, just doing anything. This is great, you guys. Please, if you're listening, share this. This is information you want to share with others, because Gerard Bonner is giving us life. Those who are interested in not just gospel music, just the music industry as a whole, he's giving us life when it comes to, I put it in the comments, basically, let's not be more interested in inspiration than information, because the information is what's going. Do you believe, Gerard, the information will keep you grounded when things don't kind of go the way that you think they should?
It absolutely will. What has happened for a lot of us is, the Bible says we perish because of a lack of knowledge. And so that wasn't done mistakenly. He purposely said that because a lot of us are inspired to do great things, but then we lack the information to do it. And so that's why we can end up in church services and we feel charged up. But if we have not been given information to how to make change, we end up charged up and we leave without the information to change. And so we end up going back into the same ruts of unsuccessful cycles. And so that's what has happened to us in our industry. At this point, there's so much information readily available. No artist should walk into a situation blind.
That's true.
So that means you've got to be willing to say, hey, I'm going to put my pride to the side and say there's something I don't know. Let me connect with somebody. Let me get a consultation. Let me hire a manager. Let me do something so that I don't walk into these situations lacking knowledge. Because here's the thing. If you walk into a record label, if you walk into a meeting for distribution, you know, you can't walk in there and say, hey, I believe God told you to sign me. Because that's not the language that they speak.
No, it's not.
You know what I mean? They're not moved by that. They're not moved by that. They're moved by, okay, what do you do? What are your social media numbers? What's your following? You know, they want to know those kinds of things if they're going to invest money into you, if they're going to sign a deal with you. And you've got to know, okay, let me share this. And this rocks some people's world.
Go ahead.
And I hope I don't destroy anybody's theology with this.
Go ahead.
But you want to know you want to know the real miracle of Pentecost?
Go ahead. I want to know.
There are a whole lot of people who have built entire denominations around what happened at Pentecost, and they built it on this one thought, that when the Holy Spirit came in, everybody spoke in different languages. But here was the miracle. The miracle was that other people were able to walk by and hear their own language spoken. So here's the key. If you have the Holy Spirit should be able to empower you to speak the appropriate language in the areas you are going in. All right? So that means you can't walk into a business office speaking in tongues, but you should be able to speak in some good business language that makes good business sense, so they go, wait a minute. There's something different about this person. So this is the thing that we as Spirit-filled believers have to get good at. We have to get good at allowing the Holy Spirit to really influence us and to inspire us and to teach us. But he can't bring something back to your remembrance that isn't already there. That's why you got to take the time to do your studying. That's why you got to take the time to understand these things, so that when you walk into these places, he can speak through you in a language that they understand.
Right.
I hope that made sense.
This is phenomenal, Gerard. This is valuable information. This information that should be sold. I mean, you're giving out great tips, but this is huge, because we both know, we've experienced so many different situations that as gospel artists we do. We'll say, you know, even in record company situations, well, God said, and God said, and I like to make this statement, and a lot of people might not agree with me, but the music industry was not created. Now, of course, I know God is sovereign. I'm well aware of that. But the music industry was not created to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's just it. It promotes music. Right. They don't care what you're talking about. Honestly, they don't. Right. If it can make money, it makes sense to them. So, and us knowing that goes back to what you just said. That means I can't just, like you said, I can't say, hey, you know, God told me and you need to deal with it. They, like you said, they're like, okay, next, moving on. Get this person out of here, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
This is great, guys. I hope you guys are listening to what he's saying. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and here's what ends up happening that works to our disadvantage, because so many of us historically have not handled business and have not gone in there to speak their language. Then they begin to think that they can take advantage of us. Now that's good. And we prove them right. We prove them right every time we go in there, and we don't know our business. That's why it's important to have somebody, if you don't know, have somebody to represent you that knows. You just don't want to walk into these situations unaware. Because, see, and if we go even deeper, this is what ends up handicapping the witness of the believer. Because if we're supposed to have the advantage that is the Holy Spirit that would empower us in these situations, and we don't utilize that, then how do we have an advantage? We don't. Yeah. So then it becomes very difficult if your record label owner or president or representative is not saved. How can you convince them to be saved when they, in this scenario, seem to know more than you and can be more savvy?
That's true.
Than you. The Holy Spirit did not come to just make us sound like a bunch of blubbering idiots. And I know some people don't like when we talk like that, but that was never his purpose. His purpose was to give us an advantage, and that is an advantage in the boardroom and in the break room.
Right.
So, in reality, we ought to be able to be in position to say, I'm going to walk in the
You're listening to TabernacleRadio.org, where the masses dwell.
Because God is on my side, and I know my stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Gerard, I mean, guys, I hope you, like I keep saying, I hope you're listening. I hope you're taking notes, because he's telling the truth, and you're not bringing this information from I don't want to say bashing place. This is the honest truth. He's saying it from the heart. He's saying it from experience. He's saying it from, he cares. I mean, it's true. Gerard Bonner he's seen situations. He's interacted with artists. He's been on one side of the table. He's been on the other side of the table. And we both have seen situations where, you'll go into a situation saying, God said, but then have to come right back around full circle and start all over again and talk to God about it again to get some more information. And that's what we don't want to happen by giving out the tips now, so that you can have a strong foundation as a music artist. Because Gerard just said it, you'll sound not well educated to a person who doesn't know God, and then they'll just overlook you and say, well, you just full of it, and moving on to the person who understands how the music industry works. Gerard, I'm soaking all this up because this is helping me. And also now so you recently signed Amonte Lacey to your management group. Mm-hmm. Now, as an artist manager, which you've kind of been doing that somewhat, it's been a part of who you are for a long time. Now, how important is it now I'm not switching lanes too much, but how important is it for the artist to stay in constant communication with their manager? Now, of course, we know it's important to do it, but as far as like when it comes to, go ahead.
I was going to say it's extremely important because you guys are a team, and so what you don't want to do is if you're a team, the manager is the coach and the artist is the player. So if the coach makes the plays, the artist can carry it out. Now there should be, I think, collaboration between the two. I don't think it should ever be just one person telling the other what to do. I think there should be collaboration. There has to be trust. And there has to be trust that the manager is going to uphold their end of the bargain and that the artist is going to uphold their end of the bargain. And I think when the two are working together, it can really be something very special. But there has to be communication between the two, because if there's a plan that's being set in place by the manager, who a lot of times will have certain connections that perhaps the artist doesn't have. What the artist doesn't want to do is go ahead and jump the gun, because if they jump the gun, it could jeopardize a lot of things. So I definitely think that the artist and the manager, they have to be able to work together to really accomplish the larger goal. Absolutely.
Okay, because sometimes, you'll get information, the artist may get information prior to the manager receiving it, and then, like you said, jump the gun and kind of communicate it prior to speaking with the manager. Then we have a conflict going on, when really the ultimate goal is just to push the music forward of the artist. But with lack of communication, that can become a problem. Now, still kind of staying in the vein of the management, do you think that artists should retain, acquire, or connect with a manager early in their career, like right when they first start?
I think you should get a manager when you have something that needs to be managed.
Okay.
Sometimes people want to, get a team, and for years I've been saying that people need a team, and you do. But I think you need a team at the point that you need a team. Now, that sounds crazy, but, when you're first starting out, if you don't have a lot to manage, what you don't want to do is get yourself into a situation where you're bringing people onto your team and you're paying people and you don't have enough money to pay them. So you may want to build your team, brick by brick and piece by piece. So as you find the need for a manager, cool. As you find a need for somebody to do PR, cool. As you find the need for somebody to be your stylist, cool. I think you just have to really make that based on, if you can't manage it anymore yourself, then cool, you should get somebody to do it. Now, I also think that in terms of a manager, you need to have somebody who can help provide direction for your career. So maybe you don't need a full-on manager at first. Maybe you need a consultant, somebody who can come in every now and again and kind of help steer the ship for you. You have to really base that on where you are in your career and the help that you'll need and what you can afford. And
Right.
I think that's a fair assessment.
So you guys hear that management, when you have something to manage, and don't take that as like, it's a bad thing. Literally, when you have something to manage, or like he said, or you may need to have someone just to consult you periodically from time to time. Now, also, Gerard, can you define or break down the difference between a booking agent and a manager for those who may not know?
Yes. Yes. So a booking agent is responsible, and I'm glad you asked that question because sometimes people get disappointed with managers when the manager doesn't double as a booking agent. So the booking agent is exclusively responsible for landing you dates. Their express job is to go out and find you places to sing, opportunities for you to perform. That is solely their job. Your manager's job is to be able to provide career direction for you. And sometimes they will end up serving as the booking manager, but that's not the primary job of the manager. The primary job of the manager is to really help provide direction for your career and help kind of steer the entire ship for you. Now, if you're in a scenario where that person has great connections, that can work to your advantage. There are certain things that a manager can get for you based on their level of relationship. But I believe the best use of a manager is to have that person that's helping to steer the ship and provide career direction for you. A lot of times what happens with artists is they get excited and with nobody. See, here's one of the reasons why that has to happen. Because artists are creatives and they have a creative mind. And creative minds are amazing. They lack structure.
Okay.
So creatives, are the type who have great vision, but usually need a manager in place to help provide the discipline to carry it out. And the manager is usually the person that can say, okay, this is a great idea, but this is our budget.
Right.
And so what can we do in this time frame? Okay, yeah, I know you want to do 7 events at the Stellars, but 3 of them are the same day at the same time. So we have to pick which one's the right one.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you need that person who's going to kind of serve as the guiding force. And let me just say this also. Just to be clear, the manager isn't designed to be the star.
Good.
And I think that's important for people to understand. Oftentimes, some managers' names you may or may not know, but the manager's not going to share the marquee with the artist.
Right.
The job of the manager is to promote the artist.
Right.
And so I think for people who are looking to get into the industry and they think, well, I'll be a manager because it'll give me an opportunity to get in with so-and-so. No. If you're looking for a path to stardom, management is not
that's
it.
not it. That's not, because then you have a conflict, and you got 2 people competing at the same time, and it's not good. It's not good at all. Go ahead.
No, it's not. You cannot promote the person that you're in conflict with.
That's true. You can't.
I can't promote you if I'm trying to get your spotlight.
That's true.
Something's not going to work.
That's so true. And I like what you said. That a majority of the time, sometimes you may not even know who the manager is. Well, unless you need to promoting it for information's sake, but you may never see them. I'll say you probably won't see them unless it's it's depending on who they are. But normally you won't, but they're definitely, you can find, you'll know that they're the machine or part of the machine helping to push the creative forward and their vision. I put in the comments that what you just said, managers help provide the discipline to carry out the artist's vision. And that's big, because I think it's honest to say that creative people aren't the best at times at structure, and that's okay. But having the manager there and the booking agent to help balance out the two. Now back to the booking agent. When would you, now if your answer doesn't have to be exact, but when would you say is a good time to bring on a booking agent?
I think that really does depend on how aggressive, how aggressively you want somebody searching for opportunities for you. That's really what that depends on. So, for instance, if you are in, if you're just trying to get dates in your local city, I don't know that you need a booking agent for that.
Okay.
I think once things begin to expand outside of your city and move to, a larger region, like maybe if we're talking up and down the East Coast, you might want somebody who can do that. I think the thing, though, is if you're going to hire a booking agent, you definitely have to give them something to work with. So a booking agent is going to have to be able basically to sell you to promoters and, to event organizers. So it just can't be, hey, I got this great singer that would be great for your program. I mean, you need to be able to have something on your resume that will make it easier for a booking agent to sell. So I would just say you don't need a booking agent until you're talking about, trying to do things on a more regional and national basis.
Okay.
And if you are, you definitely need to have, to give them something to be able to work with, a hit record, something that needs to stand out about you, that, if a booker can call somebody randomly, they would have interest in you.
Now, okay, so definitely they need the booking agent for that. But what about, so before they hire the booking agent, do you think it's important or do you think that artists should actively pursue these dates themselves? Cold calling out, communicating with venues. Do you think the artists should do that when they're just starting out?
I absolutely believe that artists need to be, Okay. Artists, yes, need to be involved in the process, but I think artists need to know their strengths as well.
Okay.
Because some artists don't do good business.
That's true.
And so because some artists don't do good business, you could be your best or worst advertisement. There are some managers, because of their kind disposition, that will get you a better deal than you will, because you as the artist, sometimes you're so connected to it, and sometimes you so believe in it that you don't know how to accept a no.
That's
so
good.
I think you have to know, you have to know your strength. And if you know that, calling people and, booking your own gig isn't a strength for you, then you should hire somebody to do that. Here's the best way to say it. Whatever's going to be the best representation for your brand is really what you should do. And I, it's like this. Most companies hire great salespeople because they're nice people and they can convince you to get the sale. It's those super aggressive people that most customers don't really want to hear from.
Right. That's true.
So you have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if, making those cold calls, or if you don't like hearing no, if you don't like that idea of being rejected, then maybe you should get somebody else to handle that part of business for you, and you just focus on creating the content.
So definitely know your strengths, and if you're strong in that area, go for it. If not, get somebody to help you with that area. Please,
Absolutely.
everybody, take down these
Absolutely.
notes. And guys, if you're watching on Facebook, if you have questions, I do have a couple questions on here, Gerard, that I'm going to throw to you. But if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the comments while we have Gerard Bonner on the line. This is Gerard Bonner. He is the owner of radio. I want to just say you are the person, but you are the owner of Bonnerfide Radio. If you guys don't know Bonnerfide Radio, you should. It is a multi-award winning online radio station, not just show, but it started out, you did start out, Gerard. It was a couple days, was it a few days a week or just a few hours during the week with Bonnerfide Radio?
Yeah, that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple hours a day, and then it just kind of morphed into this thing we have now.
Right. Huge. I'm talking about Stellar Award winning. You won a lot of awards for your radio show.
Thank you.
And also, guys, if you get a chance, check out Gerard's story, because it will motivate you as an artist to keep going. He started, Gerard, he's been doing this, 20 years or so, or more. But he started, he just said just a few hours on the radio station. Before that, Gospel Flavor, don't say Mac, it's gospelflavor.com. It still is one of the biggest online gospel media sites around. It was the place to go. I remember, if you wanted to know anything about what's going on in the gospel music industry, if you wanted an interview, pitch your artist, gospelflavor.com was the place to go. So his story is so inspiring. I would admonish anybody to check out his story and just, allow it to, I won't say minister to you, but allow it to encourage you to keep going and to stay driven, because that's what Gerard Bonner has been. He's been driven. And we're talking about gospelflavor.com to working with several radio stations as a radio host, to start his own radio station. In addition to, he hasn't stopped that. He's now a artist manager with Bonnerfide Management Group. So allow his story to inspire you, because it inspires me, and I'm happy for him and happy for you, Gerard. But we're going to go quickly, Gerard, to a couple of quick questions on here on Facebook, and then we're going to have one more question for you. One question we had regarding radio. Lee Woods had a question here. He said, does a radio station need your permission to play your music?
That's interesting. Sometimes music submissions come directly from you. Other times, it'll just pop up somewhere. Here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you make sure that your music is copywritten, that you make sure that it is registered with PROs, that's performing rights organizations like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, TuneCore, any of those places, because that's what's going to guarantee, and make sure also that it has the proper coding on it, and that's what will guarantee that when your music gets played, that you'll get revenue from it.
Okay. So Lee Woods, if you're listening, Gerard, he gave some information to your question regarding if radio stations, if they're allowed to play your music prior to asking you, if they have to ask you first to play your music. Also, Gerard, at the top of the show, I talked about Sound Exchange. And I know you're familiar with Sound Exchange, and it's a good thing for artists, because so many years artists have said, it felt like, man, everybody's getting paid but me. And it takes a little bit longer for artists to get paid unless they're on the road or they wrote their own music. But now Sound Exchange, and it's been going since 2011. Do you think that, I'm sure that you believe this is something that's great, but do you know many artists who've actually registered with Sound Exchange?
I do.
Good.
I do. And they're actually quite thankful when their checks come. Yes.
And I think sometimes when I'm sure they're thankful. They're very excited when they see the money, say coins, their money coming in. But also, do you think that sometimes people may overlook, I want to say the necessity of an artist, but the amount of time that artists put in to, if they're the person that didn't write the song or produce the song, do you think that sometimes they're overlooked as being the core of the music and the song, not just for their career, but other songs that have been put out with their voices on them, their talent on them?
Let me make sure I understand your question. So do I think that there are people who are contributing to songs that are being overlooked?
Well, not songs that are being overlooked,
question?
but the artists may have been overlooked as being an integral part of the music being successful.
That has potential to be a loaded question. I would wonder what they mean by being. I would wonder what that person would mean by being overlooked.
Well, that's a question from me.
And here's what I mean. So
that's my question.
Oh, okay. This gets interesting on a few fronts. On one front, I think artists have to learn how to master the telling of their own story.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot necessarily expect someone else to tell your story.
Right.
Now, in terms of, if I'm understanding correctly, so let's say we have artist B who has sung on, 16 songs, but nobody knows that it's them.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would be, why does nobody know that it's you? Is it
Mm-hmm.
because, A, you have not done the work to, have your name on credit somewhere, which hopefully you have?
Mm-hmm.
B, is it, or is it simply because you've not told the story?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where every artist has to be in control of their own. You cannot expect an artist who's running around promoting their music to necessarily shout out every person
Right.
who sung on their record and who promoted their record. That's like impossible.
Right.
That's just not. It's not. Not saying that person shouldn't be grateful or appreciative,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you, as the artist who's been on these 16 songs, have to then begin amassing your resume and then begin telling a story. If you're an artist who's been on that much, that many songs,
Mm-hmm.
where's your website that's telling us that story? You have a biography to be able to do for that.
Right.
There are lots of ways to be able to tell the story. So I don't want an artist to put the responsibility of the telling of their own story into somebody else's hands. Just
Right.
as we are responsible for telling our own testimony,
Mm-hmm.
you as an artist are responsible for telling your own story.
Right. And I brought that question up in relation to sound exchange when, there were times where artists weren't, not just being paid, but acknowledged for maybe the work they've done, on records and projects. And it has happened. But I like what you said, that you are in charge of your own story and being intentional about that and proactive.
Absolutely. And I would also say that you would, if you're going into a scenario where you're doing work with an artist and you're a background singer or a producer, make sure your paperwork going into it
Mm-hmm.
is properly signed. Make sure that everything is on the table so you know that you're getting the proper amount of writing credits or singing credits or performing credits on all those types of things. That is very important. And if you have that paperwork taken care of on the front end, then if you go and look on the back end and the credits aren't properly there or you're not getting the
Mm-hmm.
proper compensation, you have something to point back to.
Right. So again, going back to everything you said in the interview as we've been talking, learn the business, learn the music industry.
Yes.
Don't just sign up for these songs because, I'm not going to say God can't lead you to something, because that's definitely true and it's possible. But at the same time, learn what's going on. Just don't sign these contracts just because you just want to give your life away to somebody. Well, Gerard, you have definitely just given us life, and I'm going to keep saying that, life on top of life, as creatives, as music industry people, learning artists, musicians, songwriters, producers, because you've given so much information that covers all of those areas, from me just talking about your story to the radio piece. He talked about earlier, you guys, about submitting music, understanding the stations, that terrestrial stations and online stations operate differently, and people can change. It changes all the time as far as hosts. Also, setting a foundation for yourself regarding learning the music industry. Well, Gerard, I thank you for being on the show with me today. I'm excited, and I'm grateful that you joined me.
thank you for the invitation. I always appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Tracy. Always.
Thank you, Gerard. And please, you guys, please follow him on all social media sites. Gerard, go ahead and give everybody your information where they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Bonnerfide. That's Bonnerfide. You can follow the station there as well at Bonnerfide Radio. Check us out at the website, bonnerfideradio.com. All sorts of great and diverse programming for you. If you're looking for your traditional gospel station, we are not that. But what we are is a life-giving station that I promise will speak to every area and avenue of your life. We also do our artist tips, Facebook Live at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. It's anywhere between 30 minutes to 45 minutes just to really kind of pour into the life of creatives and artists in general. We also offer consultations as well, one-on-one. You can go to our website, bonnerfideradio.com, and click on the consultation link at the top of the website to be able to sign up for that. And we can do one-on-ones to be able to really kind of help me come alongside you to help you really accomplish all that it is that you're going to accomplish. And then we'll be in Las Vegas on March the 22nd for the Creative Collide. A lot more information coming about that very soon. And I'm so excited about what's going to happen in Las Vegas. It's going to be something very special. So hopefully you guys will plan to be there on March the 22nd for what will be a very special night. I think everybody will be talking about what happens that night. I promise you.
Yes, I know they will, because we're talking about information. It's going to be information overload that's going to give you life. I know that for sure.
It's going to be special. Very special.
It will be. So everybody, please, Gerard gave out all his information. Please follow him, support him, connect with him. Do it right now. He's right there. He's there to talk with you. Any information you need, he's right there. And also support him with that consultation. Go to his website and sign up for a consultation. Do it now. I encourage you to do it. Well, thank you, Gerard, again. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to put as many of your tips in the comments so those who check out the replay, they can write it in their notes and they can just chew on this information and get it down in them so it can allow them to grow and become better music artists in this industry. Well, thank you, Gerard. I hope you have a great evening, and I know that we will be talking soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tracy. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye. Well, everybody, that was Gerard Bonner of Bonnerfide Radio, Bonnerfide Management Group, right here on the Artist Stage Radio Show. Thank you all who have been patient and checking out today's show and listening to our interview with Gerard Bonner. Please check out the comments